My name is Linda, and 1 week before my wedding, my mother canceled every single vendor behind my back. Flowers, catering, the venue, everything. I didn't find out because she told me. I found out because the florist called to confirm something and accidentally revealed the truth. But before I tell you how I discovered what my own mother did, tell me something in the comments. Have you ever had a family member try to ruin something important in your life? Because what my mother did still feels unreal. Let me take you back to that Monday morning. I was sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee, going over the final checklist for my wedding. After 2 years of planning, it was finally happening that Saturday. 200 guests were flying in from across the country. My fiancé, Daniel, was at work, texting me excited messages about the honeymoon. Everything felt perfect. Then my phone rang. Hi Linda, the florist said. I just wanted to confirm the cancellation. I frowned. The what? There was a pause on the other end. The cancellation your mother requested yesterday. For a moment I honestly thought she had called the wrong bride. My mom canceled. What exactly? All the arrangements, she said carefully. The bridal bouquet, centerpieces, ceremony arch, everything. My stomach dropped so fast I thought I might throw up. That's not possible, I whispered. Well, she said awkwardly. She told us the wedding wasn't happening anymore. I sat there frozen because my mother had said something else to Daniel just 2 weeks earlier. She had pulled him aside during dinner, looked him straight in the eye, and said something that still echoed in my head. My daughter is damaged goods, Daniel. And if you marry her, you're making the biggest mistake of your life. At the time, I thought it was just another one of her cruel comments. I didn't realize she had already started planning something much bigger. And when I hung up with the florist and started calling the other vendors, I realized the truth was far worse than I imagined, because my mother hadn't just canceled the flowers, she had canceled everything. The caterer, the photographer, even the venue. And that meant that in 6 days, 200 guests were going to arrive to an empty lot. But what my mother didn't know was that my maid of honor had been quietly planning something for 6 months. And when my mom found out what was about to happen next, she was left completely speechless. After I hung up with the florist, my hands were shaking so badly I had to put the phone down. I kept telling myself there had to be some mistake. My mother was controlling. She was judgmental, but even she wouldn't sabotage her own daughter's wedding. Right. I picked up the phone and called the caterer. The woman on the other end answered cheerfully. Good morning, Silver Oak Catering. Hi, I said, forcing my voice to stay steady. This is Linda Parker. I'm just confirming everything for Saturday. There was a pause. Then the cheerful tone disappeared. Oh, Linda, my heart started pounding. What? Well, your mother called 2 days ago and canceled the entire order. I felt the blood drain from my face. You refunded the deposit? I asked quietly. Yes, she said the wedding had been called off. My chest tightened so hard I could barely breathe. I hung up and immediately dialed the photographer. Canceled. The rental company. Canceled. The cake. Canceled. And finally, the venue. The woman at the vineyard sounded almost sympathetic. Your mother said there had been a misunderstanding and the wedding was no longer happening. We released the date. I sat there staring at the wall in complete silence. One by one, every piece of my wedding had been erased. 6 days before the ceremony, 200 guests were already booked on flights. Hotels were paid for. Family from 4 different states were coming. And when they arrived, they were going to find nothing, just an empty lot where a wedding was supposed to be. I didn't even cry. I just sat there feeling something colder than anger slowly spreading through my chest, because suddenly my mother's words from 2 weeks earlier made perfect sense. She had leaned across the dinner table and looked Daniel straight in the eye. My daughter is damaged goods, she has said calmly, and if you marry her, you're making the biggest mistake of your life. Daniel had squeezed my hand under the table and laughed it off. But my mother hadn't been joking. She had been Planning, I grabbed my keys and drove straight to my parents' house the whole way there. My phone buzzed with notifications, guests confirming flights, friends asking about the rehearsal dinner. Everyone was excited. Everyone thought the wedding was still happening. When I pulled into my parents' driveway, my mother was sitting on the porch like nothing in the world was wrong. Tea in her hand. Perfect posture. The picture of calm. She looked at me and smiled. Oh, good, she said sweetly. You found out. And the next thing she said made my stomach drop because she believed she had just saved Emmy. But what she didn't know was that someone else had been quietly preparing for this moment for 6 months. And when my maid of honor finally told me what she had done, I realized my mother had just made the biggest mistake of her life. I stood in my parents' driveway staring at my mother. She looked completely calm, like we were about to discuss the weather instead of the fact that she had just destroyed my wedding. My daughter, she said, taking a slow sip of tea. I was wondering how long it would take you to find out. I felt something inside me snap. You canceled everything. I said, not a question, a statement. She didn't even try to deny it. Yes, she replied simply. My father was sitting in the living room behind her, pretending to read the newspaper, but I could see the way he kept glancing over the top of it. He knew. They both knew. Why? I asked. My voice sounded strangely calm. Even to me. My mother set the teacup down carefully. Because someone had to stop you before you ruined your life. I laughed once. A short, disbelieving sound. Ruined my life. By marrying Daniel. She looked at me the way someone looks at a child who doesn't understand something obvious. Linda, she said softly, you're emotional right now. But someday you'll thank me. I stared at her. You told everyone the wedding was canceled. Yes. You told vendors it wasn't happening. Yes. You destroyed something I've been planning for 2 years. She shrugged slightly. It's better than letting you marry the wrong man. I could feel my heart pounding in my ears. 200 guests are flying here this week. I said. She waved her hand dismissively. They'll understand. Mom, I said slowly. People have flights, hotels, plans. Well, she said, picking up her tea again, they can enjoy a weekend in town. The arrogance of it was unbelievable. She had erased my wedding like it was a dinner reservation. Then she leaned forward slightly and lowered her voice. I told Daniel the truth, she added. My stomach tightened. What truth? That my daughter is damaged goods, she said calmly, that a man like him deserves better. For a second I couldn't breathe because Daniel didn't even know any of this had happened. Yet. My mother stood up and brushed imaginary dust off her skirt. You'll thank me someday, she repeated. I just saved you from making the biggest mistake of your life. That was the moment I realized something. She didn't feel guilty. She felt proud. She thought she had one. So I nodded slowly. You're right, I said. Her eyebrows lifted in surprise. I should have talked to you first. Now she looked satisfied. Yes, she said. You should have. I turned toward my car. I'll figure something out. Behind me she called out casually. Cancel the invitations. Linda, it will save everyone the embarrassment. I didn't respond. I just got in my car and drove away. But the second I turned the corner, my phone rang. It was my maid of honor, Rachel, and the first thing she said was, Linda, I just heard what your mom did. There was a short pause. Then she said something that made me pull the car over immediately. Don't panic, because I've been preparing for this for 6 months. And what she told me next changed everything. I pulled my car to the side of the road so fast the tires squealed. Rachel, I said, gripping the steering wheel, what do you mean you've been preparing for this? There was a quiet pause on the phone. Then my maid of honor sighed. Linda, your mom has been trying to sabotage this wedding since the day you announced it. My stomach tightened. What? You didn't notice? She asked gently. I thought back. The constant criticism, the passive-aggressive comments, The way she kept insisting Daniel wasn't good enough. But sabotage. No, I whispered. Rachel continued. 6 months ago, she tried to convince your venue that the payment hadn't cleared. She told the florist that you were reconsidering the theme, and she tried to talk Daniel's parents into stopping the wedding. I felt cold all over. She did what? Rachel's voice hardened. I didn't tell you because I didn't want to stress you out during planning. So you just handled it? I started preparing, she said. For what? For the day she finally did something like this. I stared through the windshield at the empty street. You're telling me you expected this? Yes, my heart was still racing. Well, she did it. I said quietly. She canceled everything. Rachel was silent for a moment. Then she asked the question that made my throat tighten. Did she cancel the venue too? Yes. Another pause. Then Rachel said something that made my heart skip. Okay. Rachel, I said, 200 guests are flying in. There's no venue, no food, no flowers, nothing. Her voice stayed calm. Linda, listen to me very carefully. I've had a backup plan for months. I blinked. A what? I didn't want to say anything unless we needed it, she said. But if your mom really canceled everything. Another pause. Then she said the sentence that changed everything. The wedding can still happen. I sat there in complete disbelief. How? Because 6 months ago, Rachel said slowly, I booked another venue. My heart skipped. What? It's smaller, she said, but it's beautiful. And I kept the reservation in my name just in case. I felt my hands start to shake again. You're serious? Yes. And the catering. Also covered. The photographer. Still booked. My brain struggled to process what she was saying. You planned a second wedding. Rachel laughed softly. I planned a backup wedding. Tears finally filled my eyes. Because suddenly I understood something. My mother thought she had destroyed everything. She thought 200 guests would arrive to an empty lot. She thought she had completely humiliated me. But she didn't know Rachel had been quietly protecting this wedding for 6 months. And when my mother finally realized what was going to happen, she was going to be absolutely speechless. But there was still one problem Rachel hadn't mentioned yet. And when she told me, I realized the next part of the plan was going to be even bigger than the wedding itself. I wiped my eyes and took a shaky breath. Rachel, how is this even possible? She laughed softly on the phone. Double quotes. Linda, I've known your mother since we were 15. That was true. Rachel had been my best friend since high school. She had seen every family dinner, every holiday, every passive-aggressive comment my mother ever made. She's predictable. Rachel continued. Control is everything to her. If she couldn't stop the wedding by arguing, she tried to stop it by destroying it. And you planned for that. I whispered. Double quotes. Yes. I sat there, Stan. But there's something else. Rachel said. Something in her voice changed. What? I asked. Well, the backup venue I booked is smaller. How much smaller? She hesitated. About 50 guests. My heart sank. Rachel, we invited 200 people. I know. And most of them are already flying in. I know. For a moment neither of us spoke. Then she said quietly, that's actually the best part of the plan. I frowned. What do you mean? Rachel's voice turned almost mischievous. Your mother thinks the wedding is canceled. Right. Yes. She thinks 200 guests are going to show up to an empty lot and blame you for the disaster. My stomach twisted. Yes. Well, Rachel said calmly. What if that's exactly what happens? I blinked. Rachel, what? Think about it, she said. She wanted to humiliate you in front of everyone. My grip tightened on the steering wheel. Yes, so we let everyone show up. My heart started pounding. Again, and then I asked slowly. Rachel took a breath. And then we moved the real wedding somewhere else. I sat there in stand silence. You want to secretly move the wedding? Yes. To another venue? Yes. And let my mother think she destroyed everything. Exactly. My mind started racing. Rachel, people will be confused. Not if we handle it right. How? We only tell the people who matter most. My heart was pounding now. Daniel, she said, your closest friends, immediate family who support you, and everyone else. I asked. Rachel's voice turned calm again. Everyone else follows the instructions we send them that morning. What instructions? She chuckled. The ones that will make your mother realize she just made the biggest mistake of her life. I stared out the windshield. Because suddenly the situation had flipped completely. My mother thought she had destroyed my wedding. She thought 200 guests would arrive to nothing. She thought I would be humiliated. But Rachel had turned the entire disaster into something else. Something bigger, something my mother would never see coming. And the moment she finally realized what was happening was going to happen in front of 200 people. But the next thing Rachel told me made my jaw drop, because my fiancé, Daniel, had already added his own twist to the plan. I was still sitting in my car when Rachel said it. Daniel already knows. My head snapped up. What do you mean he knows? I called him right after I heard what your mom did. My stomach tightened, and Rachel laughed quietly, and he didn't panic. That surprised me. Daniel was calm under pressure. But having your entire wedding destroyed 6 days before it happens would make anyone lose their mind. What did he say? I asked. Rachel paused. His exact words were, okay, then we're going to make this unforgettable. I felt a small smile tug at the corner of my mouth for the first time that day. That sounds like him. Rachel continued. He's already helping me adjust the plan. What kind of adjustments? Well, remember how we said the real ceremony will happen at the backup venue with about 50 people? Yes. Well, Daniel suggested something brilliant. My heart started beating faster again. What? He said we should still let everyone arrive at the original location first. I frowned. Rachel already suggested that. I know, she said, but Daniel added something. What? He wants to turn it into a reveal. I blinked. A reveal? Yes. Rachel's voice sounded excited now. Picture this. 200 guests arrive expecting chaos. Your mom is standing there thinking she's about to watch your life fall apart. I could almost see it. Her smug smile, her folded arms. Waiting for the disaster she created. And then, I asked. Rachel continued. And then someone announces that the ceremony has moved. My heartbeat was pounding now. Moved where? To the backup venue. And everyone just goes there? Exactly. My mind started spinning. Rachel. That would mean my mom realizes in front of everyone that the wedding is still happening. Yes. And that her plan failed. Yes. And that 200 people know she tried to sabotage it. Rachel was quiet for a second. Then she said softly, exactly. I leaned back in my seat. For the first time since the florist call, I felt something different. Not panic. Not fear. Anticipation. Because my mother believed she had already won. She thought the wedding was dead. She thought I was embarrassed. But in 6 days, she was going to stand in front of 200 guests expecting humiliation. And instead, she was going to watch the wedding happen anyway. But there was still one thing I didn't understand. Rachel, I said slowly, how are we going to keep my mom from finding out about the new venue? Rachel chuckled. Oh, that part's easy. Why? Because your mom is about to be very busy. My stomach tightened again. What do you mean? Rachel's voice dropped slightly. Because Daniel has already invited someone to the wedding. Someone your mom absolutely cannot stand. And when I heard the name, I realized the next part of this plan was going to cause complete chaos. I tightened my grip on the phone. Rachel, who did Daniel invite? There was a small pause. Then she said the name, your Aunt Carol. I nearly dropped the phone. My mom's sister. Yes, I groaned. Oh my God. To understand why that mattered, you need to understand one thing about my family. My mother and Aunt Carol haven't spoken in 12 years. Not since the Thanksgiving incident. Back then, my aunt publicly exposed one of my mom's biggest lies during dinner in front of the entire extended family. Since that day, my mother has treated Carol like she doesn't exist. No phone calls. No holidays. No contact. If my mom saw her at the wedding, it would drive her insane. Daniel already called her, Rachel said, and she's coming. I leaned back in my seat. This is going to be a disaster, Rachel laughed. No, she said, it's going to be perfect. Because here's the thing about my Aunt Carol. She doesn't stay quiet. If she sees something unfair, she says something loudly. Daniel figured. Rachel continued. That if your mom tries to play the victim when the plan unfolds, Aunt Carol will be there to remind everyone what really happened. I slowly started to smile. Daniel is evil, I said. Rachel laughed again, the good kind. But there was still one thing bothering me. Rachel, I said, what happens when my mom realizes the ceremony moved? She probably lose her mind, Rachel replied calmly. And 200 people will be watching. I exhaled slowly for the first time all week. I could finally picture the moment. My mother standing there, waiting for the humiliation she planned for me. Waiting for the guests to turn on me. Only to realize the wedding was still happening. The guests were still going, and the only person who looked terrible was her. But the plan wasn't finished yet, because 2 days later, something happened that made the entire situation even more explosive. My mother found out that Aunt Carol was coming, and the way she reacted proved she was about to make an even bigger mistake than canceling my wedding. 2 days later, my phone rang again. It was my mother. I stared at the screen for a long moment before answering. Hello. Her voice was sharp, controlled, the way it always got when she was furious but trying to sound calm. Linda, she said, I just received something very interesting. My stomach tightened. What? A message from your Aunt Carol. Of course, Rachel must have told her. And I asked carefully. My mother let out a cold laugh. Are you really so desperate that you're inviting that woman to your wedding? I leaned against the kitchen counter. Well, it is a wedding invitation. She is not family. My mother snapped. There it was, the rage. I could practically hear her pacing. Mom, I said calmly. She's literally your sister. She stopped being my sister a long time ago. I didn't respond because the truth was simple. My mother hated Carol for one reason. Carol was the only person in our entire family who refused to be intimidated by her. You're humiliating yourself, my mother continued. There isn't even going to be a wedding. I almost smiled. Why do you say that? Because, she said smugly, you can't magically replace an entire wedding in 1 week. Flowers. Catering. Venue. Everything. She really believed the disaster she created was permanent. You should cancel the guest list now, she continued. Otherwise, 200 people will show up and watch you fall apart. I stayed silent. Then, she added something colder. Maybe that embarrassment will finally teach you to listen to your mother. For a moment I didn't speak. Then I said quietly, Mom, are you coming to the ceremony? She laughed. Oh, I wouldn't miss it. My stomach tightened. Really? Of course, she said sweetly. I want to see your face when everyone realizes there's nothing there. She hung up before I could respond. I stared at my phone for several seconds. Then I slowly started laughing because she had no idea. In 4 days, 200 guests really were going to arrive at the original location. Just like she expected. But what she didn't know was that the ceremony was going to happen somewhere else. And when the announcement was made, when everyone realized the wedding was still happening, when the crowd started leaving to go to the real venue, my mother would be standing there. In front of everyone, realizing that the only person who had humiliated themselves was her. But the morning of the wedding, something happened that none of us expected, because when the first guests started arriving at the empty lot, my mother decided to make a speech, and what she said almost ruined the entire plan.